On March 31, 1970, Japan Airlines Flight 351, carrying 129 passengers and crew, took off from Tokyo's Haneda Airport, bound for Fukuoka. Shortly after takeoff, 9 armed members of the militant Japanese Red Army faction hijacked the Boeing 727. The hijackers were radical communists, seeking to overthrow the Japanese government and establish a Marxist state. They carried samurai swords and explosives and demanded that the plane be flown to North Korea, a nation they idolized for its strict communist regime. The passengers on board included 10 American citizens and the famous Japanese novelist Yukio Mishima. The hijackers announced their intentions and threatened the crew, warning that any resistance would result in the destruction of the aircraft. Faced with the hijackers' demands, Captain Koji Shiraishi initially complied and diverted the plane towards Seoul, South Korea. The hijackers, however, insisted on North Korea as their final destination, and tensions on board escalated. In a strategic move, Captain Shiraishi persuaded the hijackers to land at South Korea's Gimpo International Airport under the pretext of refueling. Upon landing, the South Korean authorities quickly surrounded the plane and began negotiating with the hijackers. The hijackers, determined to proceed to North Korea, allowed the release of 23 passengers, including children and elderly individuals, as a gesture of goodwill. However, they retained the rest of the passengers and crew as hostages. South Korean negotiators tried to stall the hijackers, but their resolve did not waver. They threatened to blow up the plane if their demands were not met. Meanwhile, Japanese authorities were in touch with their South Korean counterparts to resolve the crisis. South Korean authorities tricked the hijackers by presenting them with a fake version of the plane's refueling documents, which stated that they had enough fuel to reach North Korea. Believing the deception, the hijackers agreed to resume their journey. On April 3rd, the flight took off once again, this time heading towards North Korea. Upon arrival, the plane was greeted by North Korean officials, who allowed the hijackers to disembark. The crew and passengers remained on board. The North Koreans detained the hijackers but granted them asylum, which infuriated both Japan and South Korea. North Korea later claimed that the hijackers had been absorbed into their society and were re-educated in the ways of communism. The passengers and crew were eventually released and allowed to return to Japan on April 5th, but the ordeal left deep psychological scars on those involved. The hijackers, meanwhile, became celebrated figures within certain radical circles. Yukio Mishima, the famed author on board, later wrote about his experience, criticizing the young hijackers for their reckless idealism. His observations highlighted the generational and ideological divides in Japan at the time. The incident embarrassed the Japanese government, exposing vulnerabilities in their domestic security and raising concerns about radical groups within Japan. It also strained Japan-North Korea relations, which were already tense. In the aftermath, Japan increased its anti-terrorism measures, particularly regarding air travel. The hijacking also brought attention to the global rise of radical leftist groups and the use of terror tactics to promote political agendas. The hijackers who fled to North Korea lived out their days under the regime, although a few of them attempted to return to Japan in later years, only to be arrested. Some of their descendants still live in North Korea today. Japan Airlines Flight 351 is remembered as one of the most significant hijacking incidents in aviation history, symbolizing a turbulent era of political extremism and global tensions during the Cold War.